Hi, and today I am going to be doing a coloring wheel. See, blank coloring wheel, need to color it. And I'm going to be using Crayola color pencils because most people will be able to find these, or if you can't, find some equally cheapish, run-of-the-mill plain pencils is all you really need. Now that's what I learned on I was 14, 15, something like that. Put that over there. And I first learned colored pencils and on Bristol board. This isn't Bristol board, but this is just plain paper. Now, normally you would have tooths on the paper, but for something like this, it's not really that important. If you're doing like some huge piece for a gift or as a commission or whatever, better with better paper. But for something like this, basic stuff is fine. So, what you're gonna need. Now, there's more colors on here than what you normally would do. We're gonna do a little bit more complicated color wheel. And people are like, and I know what people are thinking. Color wheels. I don't want to freaking do a coloring wheel. They're boring as hell. Yes, they are. I hated doing them in freaking school, and I don't know how many I've done, but they're handy to do, especially if you've never blended with colored pencils, because the easiest way to learn with colored pencils is just to use them, and colored pencils are about layering. That's what they're about. So, well, you do have the basic colors like, red, yellow, green, all that stuff. And you do actually, in at least a set of 36, you will have yellow, green, which is that, right? But we're not using this pencil. We're using these because we're gonna mix something like that. And so what we're gonna do? So we've got basic blue. This is just a blue. What does it say on here? Let's see. It says sky blue. There are other blues in here. I picked this one because it's close enough to the true blue. So go by what you're used to, kind of thing. And then this is basic green. This is a lemon yellow, which is like a yellow. It's just a yellow, an orange, and a red. Now, normally, okay, you might have to shades and tones and all that stuff. You'd have like blacks and stuff like that. So some people say don't use black. And I say screw it. Use black if you want to. The best way to make it not look as flat is to say take a darker color, like a dark blue, put a layer of this down before you use the black, and then put another layer of that on it, the dark blue, or even a green, some other darker color on top of the black. Makes it look less flat. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to color this in, and then next video, either next week or maybe sometime this week, depending on when I get it up. I know this was supposed to be up like a week ago, but I was sick and it knocked me for 6, and yeah, I'm just feeling better now. So I am going to, where's the blue one here? It's down here, of course. It's all the way down here, which, you might be able to see. Now, there are a couple of different ways to use colored pencils. Okay, you can use a sharp point, like it's on there, you probably can't see that, but sharp point. Now, I tend to not use a sharpest point on this, because if I'm using fur, but for this, it works. If you want to do this, you want to practice layering, sharper point's better. You don't need some fancy sharpener. You can get a basic one. I've got one that, this I'm using at the moment just a basic sharpener, but I've got the ones that, different lengths of sharpness and stuff like that. So, stop rambling, Jim. So, a couple different ways people do this. I tend to have a really light hand with colored pencils. It's just odd because with everything else I have a heavy hand. So, but there's a couple ways you can do this. So, start out light. Do not press hard with colored pencils, whether they're cheap ones, the expensive ones, whatever. Because like I said, colored pencils, all about layers. So, the less pressure you have, the more layers, the more tooth, more layers, stuff like that. Whether you solvent or whether you just layer things, the more layers, the better, right? So with the solvents is like, zest it and terps and anything like that. Anything to, mix the colors together. Same thing with watercolor pencil. Same thing. More layers, better. Which I've got another set. I'm going to do another thing of that. Anyway, I'm off topic. So, like I said, different ways to do this. So, some people, they go in circles, like this. You can do small circles, big circles. You might not be able to see that, but that's okay. Or people go even smaller circles. I don't do that, because it just drives me nuts. So, what I do is a light line. Now, I used to use graphite exclusively, because graphite is cheap, and basic paper is cheap, and that's what I learned to draw on. So with me, hatching is everything, which is great with colored pencils, because that leaves using hatching and light colors works great if you want to blend them. So I tend to change the stroke of a direction of the stroke of my pencils, so it blends better, because there's more. I can't explain it. I don't know exactly, but it just kind of blends better the more directions you have like that. Now, obviously, if you're drawing something, say like a dog, and the fur is going in one certain direction, you go in the direction of the fur as much as possible. But if it's something like this, you're just filling a space up, it doesn't matter. Now, same thing with, depending on the paper. I mean, if you're using like a pastel paper, so it's got like a rough tooth on it, tends not to matter because it eats pencils, and the direction is not a huge thing except for maybe like the final couple layers. But to get your colors up, it's not a huge deal. So I started using colored pencils for 14, 15. I don't know if I said that already. And the first book I used was by no, I don't know her last name. The last name started with a B too, I think. But that was the first book I saw. And like I said, I started out with Crayola ones, and then after a couple years, I went and I bought myself a smallish set of Prismas, which I still have some actually. So what, like 30 years later, I still have some of them, and with babysitting money, and so after that, now I don't necessarily think you need expensive pencils to do colored pencils. Don't get me wrong, though, they can help. There is a huge difference between, say, something like this, which is a basic pencil, and, say, like luminous pencils, which are really, really nice. Or even polys, or I haven't used the Derwent Lightfast ones yet because they came out, with the set after I just bought a new set of something else, the Chromaflow ones, I think it was, and I was like, oh, of course. So, but, and I used to be all, like, it was my medium of choice. I used to know all kinds of, like, when something was coming out, or how to do this, certain things with, certain brands, new brands, or just things like what new solvents and stuff like that. So you don't stuff that doesn't like zest. It's more like an orange smell. Haven't used it because I haven't bought it, and you can get it in this country now. So I might get it later. But I just normally use terps. You can also use like a blending marker for like alcohol markers. That works too. So like ISO, stuff that's in that. It's just basic. Blends it. I think it only works with wax, so I don't know if it works with oils. The blender markers. I don't actually know. But anyway, so yeah. Back to me. So I used to draw. I sort of started drawing album covers, like CD, little booklets you used to get in CDs. You do still get them in CDs, but people are like, "What's a CD?" Fuck off. But and then movie posters and stuff, and stuff like that, just to practice. And then flowers and basic stuff, animals. I did a lot of animals. I think my mom might still have something I drew. I drew this like mountain lion, and last time I saw it was years ago, and it hadn't faded, which I was shocked to see. That was done with the Prismas, though. Wasn't done with these. And it was mostly browns and greens, which is probably why it hadn't faded, because reds, pinks, purples, anything like that notoriously fades when you're using colored pencils. Which is why when you look at the set of Lightfast pencils from Derwent, they don't have a lot of very, pinks, because it fades a lot. And so you have to either use special glass, scan it, make sure it doesn't fade. And, a lot of stuff fades. It's unfortunately part of being art. A lot of the stuff that we use as artists, it will fade. Oils doesn't really, some of the colors will change, but it depends on the pigment and stuff like that. See, the main thing, actually, but speaking of pigment, the main thing you'll notice about cheap pencils and expensive pencils, pigment is used more in the expensive pencils. So these, you get more of, more color, or vibrant color, and they can be a little easier to blend, even though it is perfectly possible to blend with these, I know from, like I said, it's the first thing I learned on. So it's kind of like, do I think somebody should get expensive pencils to learn? If you can afford them, sure, but what if you don't like the medium? And then you're stuck with these expensive pencils. Yeah, you can maybe sell them, but you're not going to make your money back. And you get cheap ones like this, and I figure, my whole thing is, you get the cheap ones like this, you learn how to use the cheap ones, you don't like them, okay, maybe get a couple pencils. But you don't need a huge set either. You can get away with like these 5 pencils, and you'd be fine. And, or is there 5 colors? Yeah, there's 5 colors. And, you'd be fine. But, they're nicer pencils, don't get me wrong, they're nice. But, at the same time, it's kind of like, I know some people, and I was for the longest time, don't want to use the nicer pencils because they're expensive. You don't want to waste them. Well, you can't learn them if you don't use them, so you gotta waste them, or whatever you want to call them, in order to use it. In order to learn, we'll say. You're not really wasting it, you're learning, you're experimenting, you're doing stuff like that. So yes, I'm rambling. But, so, back to the pencil. So yeah, like I said, 14, it's my art teacher, which I do remember, we were living in Dunnville in Ontario, very small town, really good high school at the time, don't know what it looks like now, but art program there, I actually was really lucky. All the all the high schools I went to had really good art programs, and I I was really lucky, and I know that. I somehow lucked out on the schools that I went to had really good art programs, and now I know it's like funding and stuff like that. But art's important. People don't think it is, but it is. A lot of the shit we have, you wouldn't have without art. So it's kind of like, okay, it's not just like pretty pictures and making people feel better, or making jewelry, or making. It's not just about looking nice and stuff like that, or drawing somebody's pet, or tattoos, or anything like that. A lot of stuff, you break it down, a lot of stuff down. A lot of it comes from art. The basic starts in art, and then you go from there. But, you know, that's another topic. So, but yeah, so, exactly, this is just really light layers. Now, see how light this color is? I wish I had another pencil with me, because then I could show you. Do I have any with me? No, I don't. Maybe when I'll go and get some other ones. I'm gonna come back to do these. I'll show you the difference between the, like a blue, like I'll go get a poly, or that's my phone. It's probably him would be John outside. He's doing something outside. But, I don't know, I'll look at it later. So, but, what time is it anyway? Well, maybe not. Maybe it's important. Maybe I should look at that. I don't want to look at it. Actually, I'll go look at it. I'll be back. And I'm back. And, so yeah. I can't remember what I was saying. I don't remember. Oh yeah, colored pencils. See if I can get a different blue. Like a more expensive blue, we'll say. And, but yeah. So, it's like, I'm busy! No. I should actually just turn that off, but hey. But yeah, so yeah. I lost what I just say. It's great. I can't remember what we're talking about. Yeah, colored pencils. Oh yeah, you don't need expensive shit. Learn with the cheap stuff. Cheapest. If you're gonna, okay, okay, rule of thumb. Cheapest supplies, if like pencils, watercolors, if that's what you can afford. But get the best paper that you can afford. So if you could have got, like, for this, it's like the Kenson, well, not that it's expensive paper, but a little bit better. Like, it's, what is it? I can't pronounce it. I'll put it up here somewhere, or whatever, you know, around here, or whatever. I don't even know what the camera is. There, what it is. And it's not even that expensive. It's maybe like a pound a sheet, if that. Less than that if you can get it on sale, you know. And that works for that. See how light that is? And I'm slowly building it up. And so changing direction and stuff like that. But yeah, the best paper you can afford. And if you can only figure it's like cheap, or if all you could afford was these are perfectly fine. Don't let anybody have this idea. Supplies from like a dollar store or cheap stuff like this. It's just for kids. Okay, that might be a target audience, but you know what? There's nothing wrong with adults using this. Adults can do whatever the hell they want. They're adults, you know. We're not kids anymore. We can do what we want, you know. Damn it. No, but so yeah. There are plenty of things you can use if, you know, you really can't afford stuff. So don't let anybody tell you, oh, you can't be an artist because you can't afford this. It's bullshit. Anybody can be an artist. Look, well, who was it that was using, Pollock? A lot of people use the house paint, or whatever, in the garage, whatever, just for paint. You know, whatever you've got, use it. You know, but you don't have to have the expensive stuff. Yeah, okay, it's nice and it can help, don't get me wrong, like I said before, but it's not necessity, you know. Now, that's what bugging me about this. It's like, oh, you need this and that. Like I said, I started drawing on graphite and freaking, well, it's not technically graphite, there's no graphite in it. I'm not getting into that, it's a huge long story, but pencils, you know, pencils like HB, blah, 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 right, that you can get, and just like printer paper, even the dot matrix paper, like I was drawing that for a long time because we couldn't afford it, didn't have a lot of money, and all I just wanted to do was draw. I mean, I was like, school, that's what I was talking about. I was lucky, I had a lot of mom's friends at the time were artists, or either music, or actually with art and stuff, so I was surrounded by a lot of people. Okay, some of them were probably, you know, the typical thing, you know, like starving artists, like, you know, drinking a tad too much, but, still, it was a very, interesting childhood I had, we'll say that, and, but I had a lot of people around me that was like, you want to be creative? Go ahead, you want to do this? I was never stopped from being an artist. I know some people are like, oh, you can't do this, can't do that, because you're not going to make any money. Yeah, okay, maybe like people like, oh, AI and all this stuff. Yeah, okay, that might stop some things, but people do that with like probably the cameras and stuff like that. When people were, like paintings and stuff, like, people still get their portraits painted. Maybe not as much, obviously, but you get in the camera, but like even just everyday people are able to take photos eventually, you know, rather than like the really rich could only afford, you know. And AI's got its problems. Don't get me wrong. I'm not getting into that. Once again, another topic altogether. Not getting into that, but you know, it's. Oh, what's that? This is always hidden dinging outside. I was like, ding, I'm here. But, so yeah, I was really lucky. I mean, I had, like I said, art schools, high schools I went to, were actually all over the state. I went, even the one in, Tabor, was pretty good art, you know, department and stuff like that. Like I said, these probably don't. I mean, they probably still have art in these places, but it's nowhere near probably what it was like when I was there as a teenager. Then again, that was like 30 years ago. So you know, like no one could have. But you know, and then Dover, like Port Dover, once again, that actually high school is shut, I think. So that's not there at all. And it was a good, and they had a kiln, they had all kinds of stuff, and the one in Dunville had a dark room, and they had all kinds of stuff. They had a cosmetology, they had music. So if it hadn't been art in university and college, it would have been either something to do with music, whether that's, you know, like mixing music or something like that, or I don't know, all kinds of things you do in music too, or it would have been what's train of thought there, or like marine biology or stuff. Now see, I wish I had been on the meds I am for the ADHD now, back when I was a teenager, because I know for a fact I would have went into done science and stuff like that, rather than art stuff. I don't regret doing the art and stuff, but at the time it came, because I was sick of freaking moving and going to so many bloody schools, I was like, you know what, I know what I'm doing in art, so let's just keep the art, because then I don't have to try, you know, the basic teenager, young kid thing. I don't have to actually try, I can just get by doing the bare fucking minimum, you know, so that worked for me. But, so, I am gonna go probably color this off screen, because it's gonna take freaking forever. I've already rambled for, I don't know, almost 20 minutes. I don't know. Oh yeah, I had to get up and do something else. But yeah. So see, this is very late. Now this is gonna take a bit, not a lot long, but you can actually go a little bit harder than I am. But I'm trying to kind of stay in the line, you know. But yeah. So we could have went darker blue, but I like this blue. It's an alright blue. And now there's other, like I said, oh yeah, this is the other thing you can do. What else can you do? The circles, the cross hatching. What other people do? They do like shape. They can whatever way. Like I don't hold a pencil. I mean, I had a friend used to color like this. I don't know how the hell they did it, but they drew like that, and drew really well actually, like that. I'm like, okay. I mean, I know I can sometimes hold a pencil oddly, but that's because my fingers can dislocate and stuff. So yeah, but it's a lot of fun. Yay! But I really have to. No, since I don't have a script, because I never follow it anyway. You know, maybe I was thinking next video when I go over like the basics of the color, I might have a script I can read out, like in a voiceover and stuff, just so I stay on topic rather than just ramble about pointless crap. But it's but yeah. So like I said, high school, I'm how lucky I was, and I know that for a fact, especially here talking to like the really younger. So I went to college in my 20s, late 20s, early 30s, and then university in early 30s too, and then talking to some of like the people that were just 16, just because you can leave school at 16 here, and they're talking about their art, and I'm just like, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. It's like they didn't know, like, the basics. These are basics, and I'm like, you never had to do a color wheel, you never had to do, like, okay, this is boring as crap, don't get me wrong, people like don't like doing it, but it is useful to do. And you didn't do basic, even like drawing and it's like stuff like that. It's like basic painting or just the basic stuff that even like you do like in like kindergarten. I'm like, what? Like, and I'm like, oh, okay. And then just talking to even some people at uni even, I'm like, okay. Even in different countries, like states, other European countries, Japan, China, like there's like the Dundee Uni. There's students from all over the place. Now they're going through problems at the moment. I'm not getting into that too. Once again, another video, maybe if I can get me bothered with that. That's a whole fucking shit show. Anyway, but I lost train of thought. And I've taken my meds. You couldn't tell, but yeah. So I'm actually kind of lucky in that aspect. I mean, and like I said, mom's friends and dad was always artistic. He was always the whole kind of thing. I mean, there was roughly a year growing up that I didn't really draw, but for whatever reason, I don't fucking know. And but then I got back into it. But I mean, color pencils. I love color pencils. It's like my kind of medium. But then printmaking. I love printmaking so much, but a lot of it is so physical. I can't actually do it anymore. So if I ever got a press, like a wheeled press, I mean, John would have no problem helping me with that, but I'd have to get him to help me, like ink any plates up or anything like that. I mean, I can do lino printing because you can do that sitting down and use like a spoon, even as a like a not a baron, is it a baron? Yeah, and you know, all that stuff. But anything like etching and stuff, like with an etching plate, it's actually quite a lot of physical. Like what? Like, well, yeah, it is actually more physical than people think. But I want to try kitchen lithography once. I haven't done that. This is lithography, I think, is actually one of the only things I haven't done printmaking wise. I think. Yeah, I think that is because we we didn't even ask stuff in like high school and stuff, but no. And then one thing I asked somebody if they had done like batik, you know, like the wax resist stuff, and the color, and they're like, no. They're like, what? I'm like, oh god. But that's a lot of fun too. But gotta be bothered doing that. I've got the things to do it now, but I have to get some wax. I don't have enough. I don't have any wax, but that's easy enough. That's easy enough to get. But like I said, I make videos whenever I kind of feel like it, and I draw whenever. So if I'm doing something like this, it's like, you know, but no, I've been thinking like, okay, we'll go back to school. I'm like, well, if I can afford it, I will have to, but I kind of can't. So I've been thinking, okay, what can I do? I can look into animation, which is maybe what I should have went into when I was at uni rather than graphic design. Not because of the whole AI shit going on at the moment with graphics and all that stuff like that. It's just because it was me, but it wasn't me. Either print, like fine art with like printmaking and stuff. I should have done that, or I should have done illustration. Illustration I probably really should have done, actually. That's probably what I should have done. But, or as like I said, if I had been on my meds at the ADHD meds earlier, I would have done sciences, and I would have went and done either like marine biology, or I would have went into, you know, archaeology or something like that. And oh, well, if you're in a wheelchair, how can you do archaeology? There are there are lab work, you know. But, so, I'm gonna go off and paint this. Well, technically, there are some colored pencil people that do call this painting, you know, but with colored pencils, because, you know, but I can ask one of my lecturers that way, why do they call using pastels, like when you talk pastels, it's pastel painting, but it really is kind of like just drawing. And he's like, well, mostly because, he goes, this, whether he's bullshitting me or not, I don't know, because it feels like of all the, like, you know, little papers and stuff, like, it's like a code, and like, because it feels all like little nicks and crannies and paper and stuff, because it's like a canvas and stuff. Because yeah, that's pretty much what I've been told. So who knows what? And I've looked it up, and that's what people say, and I'm kind of like, well, okay, I guess maybe, I don't know, maybe it's a lot of crap, but yeah. So like I said, I went to a lot of schools and all that stuff. So, but first thing I majorly focused on was colored pencils, like for 14, 15, whatever. And then after that, it's actually the same time it was printmaking, like etchings and stuff like that, which is maybe why I like doing both of them. But, and then it was ceramics after that, I think, because they had kilns and stuff in most of the high schools. Unlike a lot of schools, even colleges don't have a lot of kilns. College I went to in our growth does, or did, but I don't think they do now, because they merged with Dundee College and stuff, so, but, yeah. But, so yeah, I'm done rambling for the moment. Dinner's almost done anyway. I'm gonna go color this off screen because it's gonna take a while. And I'll fill in the blue, the yellow, and the red. And then maybe just like basic green, orange, and the violet. And then we'll come back and I'll mix the other ones up on screen. Okay, be back. Okay, bye. And I'm back with a almost finished color wheel. And I left everything but one uncolored because of that. Watching every colors, all this stuff, can be boring as fuck. So, what I'm gonna do though is I'm gonna finish this one. So, what I've got is the same color violet I used for that, and the same red I used for that. Now, I think the reason I have such a light hand with colored pencils is because I started with these. Actually, now that I think about it, because in order to get like blended layers, you have to actually have a lot of layers and a light hand. So that's probably why I have a light hand really with these rather than everything else. I have to get like a hand of grips of death on. And so you take either one, it doesn't really matter which color you use first. It can and it can't, but because you're doing this and it's really light layers, it doesn't matter. Now if you were doing like a light-ish, like say an eye, which I'm gonna do next, that you start with the lightest color. It just makes more sense, right? But for this it doesn't really matter because you're just wanting one solid color. But if we're doing an eye, then I will start with a light color first, just to have one base layer, whether that's like a cream or a whatever color. You don't tend to use white, you use the white of the paper, unless you're using colored paper, which I tend to do actually more than just white paper, because I like having the toned paper, and because it helps a lot with shadows, and just shading in general, I think, and it saves actually time. You can also use like watercolors or markers or anything like that, but like colored pencils, like I said, I think I've said before, will fade. Markers, especially alcohol markers, will fade. So kind of putting something that'll fade on top of each other, probably not the best idea, but you can do it. And if you're not selling originals, it doesn't really matter. And the thing is, a lot of art, you know what, it's even like 200 years ago stuff, it's changed color, it's faded, it's stuff like that. So there's a very light layer, it's not even, it doesn't have to be at this age. So right there. So now, I would normally not do this one by one, but if you're just starting, I would do like a layer of blue, layer of red, layer of blue, switch back and forth until you figure out pressure and stuff, because you don't want to do too much pressure on one area and then not have any paper left to put I can't even think what I'm gonna say to put any more color on, because actually this is a good example. So reach over here, so it's coloring this is the color, right? You might be able to see this has got no paper. This is just basic paper on, yeah, okay, it's shiny, but because this is really thin paper, it's eaten through the paper, and you might be able to see that. I don't know. So to get any kind of shading on this, you layers and layers, you're gonna end up possibly going through paper. That's why it's better to have thicker paper is better than the thinner paper like this. You would never do anything like, you could practice on stuff like this, but I wouldn't do anything like a gift or commission or anything like that, or any of this kind of thing is gonna be final on a thin piece of paper like this, because you will run out of paper before you actually get the right color that you want, because you through it, or you will not be able to get any more colors onto the paper because it's so smooth, nothing else. And there's fixative you can get, it's like workable fixative, and it kind of helps. It's not going to completely bring back the paper, the surface of the paper to use, but it'll give you maybe a couple more layers depending on the paper and how heavy-handed you are. And actually, we'll go this way. So I'm just switching like angles and direction of the stroke of the pencils, because then it covers up more. The color coverage will get more even. That's what'll happen with that. But yeah, back to the workable fixative. That it won't give you like a lot more layers of pencil, but in a pinch, it'll give you a couple, and you might be able to either add some more color or fix a mistake. Which is another thing, working light like this, you can fix mistakes. If you push really hard on the pencils, you're not gonna be able to fix a mistake, because they only erase so much. Even the erasable pencils don't erase completely. They will still have a bit of a faint line, which is fine if you're just inking it and stuff like that. Especially if you're using like a blue, like a non-photo blue or whatever, that doesn't really matter, or anything like that. And you can use any color, it doesn't have to be the blue. It's just people use blue. And but yeah, they will not erase completely, which is fine. But if you make a mistake, you can't fix it, which sucks if you really spent hours and hours and hours on things, because like I said, color pencils takes a long time. And yeah. But yeah, so like I said, this can take forever, but you can sort of see. I mean, when you look at the colors, like, okay, that's blue and that's green, and it's kind of like in between. It's a little more blue. If I put a layer of blue over that, it probably look better. But so if you don't like the way of something, if you can put another layer of color over it, put another layer of color over it. But sometimes you can't. You run out of either paper is too thin, or it's got not enough tooth, or it just isn't taking any more. You've got too many layers, and it won't take any more color. Which sometimes does happen too, but like I said, work to fix it sometimes does that. Now, you can use normal fixative, but a lot of it you can't work over. But if you're planning on spraying any other like colored pencils with any kind of fixative, I would do a test piece first, because sometimes the fixative does change the colors of things. Now, sometimes does, and sometimes does. It like I said in the last time, like with the reds, oranges, and purples and stuff like that. Those are the colors that tend to change, because the reds and the pinks and the purples, browns and stuff usually is fine. But I would do like a small test piece anyway, just to make sure, so you don't ruin possibly hours and hours, days of work. Or hell, you might even like this. I've sprayed something after and didn't do a test piece because I was like, hey, that's lift dangerous, and it actually changed the colors completely different. It made them like more vibrant. So I was like, hey, great, that works. I don't have to go over it again. But yeah, so you can kind of see the colors are blending together. Now, I meant to point out actually, when this happens with paper. I don't know if you can see that. You might be able to see it. Maybe. It's kind of shiny. But that spot there, well, go down, good. There, it's a little whiter. That's because there's something on the paper. I don't know if it's oils or it has like, now it could be oils. It could be, you can use scratches and stuff like that. That's another technique actually when you scratch paper. But you it's probably oils and stuff. Generally, if this was like a final like good piece, I'd put like a piece of paper or tracing paper, something underneath my hand, so I don't have like my hand scrolling like this, because the oils on my hand will mess with the pencils. But it happens, and it's a pain in the butt when it does, and you can't do much about it when it happens. you know, so you try not to let it happen in the first place. So you just kind of protect yourself, or protect the paper, I should say, or whatever you're working on, because you don't want to ruin what you've been working on. Because like I said, and I'll say a lot, color pencils take a long time. Even using the solvent, it can take a long time to build up the layers. But which is what I find frustrates a lot of people when they start using colored pencils, that it can take a long time, so they just rush forward and like tend to like make really, I mean, you can kind of tell this is kind of shiny, but that's partly because of the paper. But if I were using different paper, like say I don't know, any kind of paper, it was a bit of tooth on it, wouldn't be quite as shiny, even though it is a problem with colored pencils, you get like a shiny thing. Even same with the graphite and stuff. It happens more with wax type pencils, I find, but you also get wax bloom with wax pencils, which is one of the reasons I kind of stopped using them so much, because I got sick of that, which is like a foggy kind of film on it. You can also get rid of that, but it comes back sometimes, most of the time. And it's just the nature of the pencils. It's just because it just builds up, and it's a pain in the butt. So yeah, so many layers, and it's starting to kind of look uniform, kind of. You can kind of see that, but I'm looking at the camera, you probably can see me, but that's okay. And then, so we'll take this in which direction? We will go straight at the bottom. Now I'm just turning the paper around just so it's, you know, easier than that. If it was taped to the board, I would just move the board, but then I'd have to move the camera, and I can't be bothered, so I just unplugged the camera, because I was like, screw it, or didn't tape the paper down. But cause normally I would have this, like I said, if it's a good piece, I would have this taped down and paper covering any places I'm not working on, so that it doesn't get anything on it that it shouldn't, whether that's pencils that I accidentally drop, or like I said, oils from hands. Oh, you drop pencils, they will break inside. They might look fine, but they will break when you sharpen them 9 times out of 10. Best thing after that is, if you can, use a knife, because they're gonna be really fragile inside. There is a microwave trick you can do with like wax pencils, but I don't recommend it unless you know what you're doing, because sometimes they can get too hot, and sometimes metals on the writing will kind of react and it could spark in your microwave, and that could cause problems. Some people I know have left them in their car, like if they live in like a really hot country or state or country or whatever, and they leave them in like a car window, and that can help. They could put the pencils back together, the lead inside of them. But I tend to not use like wax pencils anymore. I have a bunch, but I tend not to because they are so fragile. Which is also why I try to buy open stock, because a lot of the time open stock is, well, I know I'm going to use the color, unlike in a set where I might not use the whole set, but usually I don't. Like, I don't use any metallic colors. I've never used the metallic pencils because they're really scratchy. At least they were. And even the ones I find now are really scratchy, and I just never use them. It's just a pain in the butt. But it's, that's the thing. If you're gonna get pencils, even just go buy, like, the basic colors. Don't buy them open, like, in a set, because sets are usually more expensive. Yeah, some of the pencils can get, like, expensive. I mean, like, a luminance pencil, anywhere from £3 up, pencil, usually. That's usually on sale, but anyway, 3 to 5 is usually about the cost of pencil. But pencils last a long time, even sharpening them, they last a long time. Yeah, and I just broke my own rule there, going over things twice, but I know what I'm doing, so it's kind of cheating, but, not cheating, but yeah, if you're gonna get open stock pencils, get open stock pencils. So yeah, am I gonna color all this on camera? No, but I'll be back, and then it'll be finished, and then you'll see. So just repeat those steps over and over again, changing the direction, blah, blah. It gets really tedious, and but I kind of zone out on it, and that's the same thing when I'm doing like pointillism with like a pen or an ink, or when I'm doing etching, I kind of just zone out, because you just kind of get in a kind of groove, I guess you want to call it, if you want to use like, you know, outdated terminology. And so yeah, you just keep going over and over and over and over, making sure that your color is roughly uniform is what you need to do, and then you just go over and over. And this is actually good practice, because when you're keeping your pencil pressure the same all the way through, you can kind of see it's just different colors there. You might be able to see it. Is it in the camera? Yes, it is. But so yeah, I'll be back, and then it'll be finished. And yeah, so yeah, okay, and the finished color wheel. And I left this. You might be able to see it, maybe. I don't know. Let's see. It's kind of shiny because of the light. But so I did on the one that's supposed to be red and violet. I did the show. There we go. You can kind of see. Okay, so this is just. It's got equal layers of red and violet on them, until I did the violet last on this one, so it keeps it more of a purple color, and this one is red last. So that's why it's more red. Now this is how you'd build up shading, because you would add and take away colors to build up shading, which I'll do next video. Actually, I've figured out what I'm going to do next video. This is probably a coloring book page because it'll be easier to do that way. But that's what I'm going to do next week or whatever. I don't know, whenever I get stuff done, because like I said, it happens when it happens, and it's, you know, I'm not, you know, things get done when they get done, you know. So like, share, subscribe, questions, great, you know, leave a comment if you want. Don't have to, but it's always nice when people do. And like I said, next video will be shading, probably the coloring book page, just because I can't be able to draw anything at the moment. Well, I am drawing, but I'm not, you know. And but yeah, so that'll be the next one. So that's done. First one of, I don't know how many. I don't even know how many videos a week I put up, because like I said, not a YouTuber. I'm not, you know, that kind of person. You know, I don't videotape that often because I hate editing. That's what it comes down to. I like the music part. I like editing music. The videos, yeah. But anyway, okay, bye.